In this video, we're going to do a comprehensive metabolic study on the popular, well-known sugar diet that has currently gained its popularity within the last few months on social media. Is it worth it? Does it work? How does it work? And should you use it? So in the video, we're going to go over the couple key concepts and scientific concepts around the sugar diet and why it works for some people and why it's not working so well for others. A little bit about how your metabolism works and why the sugar diet is relatively correlating to the metabolism, the science behind carbohydrate metabolism, which is the primary science behind the sugar diet, and then we're going to go the right way to utilize glucose metabolism with metabolic priming, and I'm actually going to show you the right way to utilize glucose metabolism, which is the primary driving factor of the sugar diet, with one of our clients, John, who made an amazing transformation right here, actually utilizing carbohydrate metabolism the correct way. So I want to get into this video because we got a lot of different great things to cover. I do appreciate everybody who has been supportive of the channel. If you guys don't know me by now and you're new to my channel, my name's Adam Bono. I'm an online metabolic strategist, and I've helped over 400 plus men in just the last 6 months alone utilize a high-level approach to metabolic manipulation called metabolic priming. So we've helped 400 plus men in 7 different countries in just the last 6 months alone, and our results are quite astounding. But the crazy thing is it's very similar to the popularly known sugar diet, and there's a lot of key mechanisms around it that are very similar. But I want to actually explain the sugar diet and the concepts around the sugar diet in very good detail so you guys understand really what's going on in today's, fitness industry with this new popular fad diet, and if you should try it and if it should work for you or not. So first thing you should know about the sugar fasting craze is there are no randomized controlled trials on this diet. So it's only available on social media. It's not been studied in actual metabolic science before. So keep that in mind. But if you guys haven't heard of the sugar diet, what the sugar diet relatively is low protein, low fats, and then high carbs, extremely high carbs. And so a lot of people who are doing this diet are having success, but a lot of people are not, and let's actually recognize why. So the type of people who are having major benefits from the diet is, one, people who have been on low-carb keto for a very long time, and I'm going to explain why. 2, people who have been in low calories for extended period of time. So people who have been dieting for an extended period of time and just on severely low calories under the 2,000 calorie mark, kind of spinning their wheels. And then people who just been simply overeating. So obviously just cutting protein and cutting fat is going to cut calories, and so you're going to be by default in the calorie deficit. So those are the 3 types of people that are actually benefiting from this overall sugar dieting craze. But let's understand why people who have been on low carb diets, or even low caloric diets for extended period of time, are seeing a tremendous amount of progress within this overall sugar diet craze. Because we have to understand what happens when you actually go low carb, right? When you go low carb or you go low calorie for extended period of time, your BMR starts to downregulate to metabolically adapt to the calories you're consuming. Bodily inflammation starts to rise, prohibiting fat loss. Your body has less fuel to promote healthy digestion, and your body transitions into using fats as energy. So what I mean by your body has less fuel to promote healthy digestion is that when you start to go low calories and low carb, carbohydrates directly do correlate to digestive factors and digestive enzymes, as well as just healthy pro and prebiotics within your overall gut health, right? So when you go into a ketosis state or a low carb state, you actually infer something called adaptive glucose intolerance, right? With the body temporary difficulty in processing glucose, often seen after dietary changes like transitioning the body from low carbohydrate to high carbohydrate. It's normal physiological response to the body adjusts to a new fuel source. So basically, a low carb diet is your body transitioning into what's called a fat adapted state, right? A state of actually using fats as energy in the ATP process. So it's a temporary impairment, dietary transition and it's a normal response. How does it happen? Reduced insulin sensitivity, delayed glucose uptake, and it's just a overall metabolic adjustment, right? But what we want to understand why people who are using these sugar fasting crazed diets are seeing a tremendous amount of actual progress is because carbohydrates in an essence actually reduce cortisol and inflammation, right? And this is what I've been preaching on my channel for so long about carbohydrates, and here's the actual data and the research behind it. So according to the research in randomized controlled trials, carbohydrates can potentially reduce stress, by influencing the body's cortisol levels, with studies showing that increased carbohydrate intake can lead to a decrease in salivary cortisol. So as you go low carb and low calorie, you start to accrue a bunch of this cortisol into your body, whether it's physiological or psychological, your body, one, starts to reduce a lot of this stress and cortisol right off the bat with more carbohydrate intake, right? And so even when we get into low carbohydrate diets and cortisol, low carbohydrate diets, especially those in very low carbohydrates, like ketogenics, can trigger the stress response, potentially leading to increased cortisol levels. According to Kaluna Health, this is because the body may need to produce more cortisol to generate glucose from alternative sources. And so what we know about low-carb diets is that, one, it does induce cortisol. Cortisol and higher levels of stress are the main cause of digestive issues. This is due to the intestinal permeability that weakens the digestive walls, and this can happen due to a couple different reasons: high levels of bodily inflammation, and this outlines the importance of sleep and recovery. But also on top of that, carbohydrates increase serotonin in sleep. So the sugar fasting craze is in reducing cortisol and increasing serotonin, which is overall reducing cortisol and reducing stress, because carbohydrates can directly influence serotonin levels, impacting mood, sleep, and appetite. This stems from the fact that carbohydrates, particularly though that trigger insulin release, can facilitate the transport of tryptophan, amino acid to serotonin precursor, into the brain, where it's therefore converted into serotonin, which in essence will also improve sleep. So like the sugar fasting craze, and the guys who are having a lot of success for it are the people who've been doing low carb, and now they add carbs into their diet, and they're seeing a lot of benefits from the carbohydrates. So the idea is, when you reduce your fats and protein, the cell has no choice but to start learning how to utilize glucose properly again. So remember, when we talked about low-carb diets and ketogenic diets, or even like low-caloric diets in general, your body goes into a glucose-intolerant state where it doesn't know how to utilize glucose properly. So the sugar diet is basically force-feeding your body's cells to actually open up and start utilizing glucose correctly. The purpose of this is to reduce inflammation in the body and transition the body into a glucose metabolism. And so here's kind of a diagram on what's really happening with this overall sugar dieting craze, right? You're getting glucose now to actually absorb into the cell, which is giving your body not only a decrease in cortisol, raise in serotonin levels, increase sleep, and just an overall increase in feeling good, which immediately will impact weight very, very rapidly, right? Because when you look at the metabolism and how it actually correlates to overall carbohydrates, so carbohydrates are directly correlated to your body's main fuel source, right? So like, for instance, your resting metabolic rate, your body's breathing, blood flow, sleeping, organ function, your essential body functions, as well as carbohydrates have a 10% thermic effect. So once you transition from fat adapted state to carbohydrate metabolism, you therefore have a 3 times more thermic effect of food that you're actually utilizing and you're breaking down. And that does make up, 10 to 15% of your metabolism. And then the overall NEAT, right? So as you start to increase carbohydrate, you start to get more energy, and you start to actually influence energy levels, which actually influences non-energy activity thermogenesis. And even then, on like the thyroid level, is that carbohydrates are associated for T3, right? So lower carbohydrate diets are associated with lower T3 levels, and then higher carbohydrate diets are associated with higher T3 levels. And they even did a study on the effect of caloric restriction and dietary composition of serum T3 and reverse T3, and they concluded that dietary carbohydrate is a regulatory factor in the T3 production in man. So what these sugar diets are doing is pushing the body to utilize glucose, reducing cortisol levels, influencing T3 levels, and overall making you sleep better, feel better, have more energy, which therefore boosts your metabolism very slightly. So when we get into overall fat adapted and carbohydrate metabolism, there are two separate states that I want you to kind of understand. So fat adaptation, for instance, is the body's utilizing fat as its primary fuel source. It's a metabolic shift. Fat oxidation, ketogenesis, in our achieving fat adaptation, right? But when we go into carbohydrate metabolism, the benefits of carbohydrate metabolism on the other hand involves the body's use of carbohydrates for energy, primarily through glucose, and it's the default fuel source for most people. So carbohydrate metabolism, for instance, and the benefits of it is that a series of chemical reactions that break down and utilize carbohydrates into a living organism. This is a crucial process that provides energy for cellular functions and maintains blood sugar levels, right? So steps of carbohydrate metabolism: digestion, absorption, glycolysis, pyruvate metabolism, glycogen storage, gluconeogenesis, and carbohydrate metabolism is essential for maintaining energy homeostasis, regulating blood sugar levels, and supporting various bodily functions. And so they've even done a study on the actual fat accrual from certain macromolecules called de novo lipogenesis. So in this study, they found is that carbohydrates actually store less body fat than dietary fats, right? So they overfed people 1,000 calories, right? And they were trying to figure out exactly what kind of fuel source that actually supported fat accrual, right? And obviously calories at the end of the day, yes, do support fat accrual, but the calories were equated in this specific randomized control trial. And what they found is that carbohydrates store less body fat for the reasons that we just stated above, is that they are, the body's main fuel source. Your body prefers to burn carbohydrates. So now that we know all of this, we can get into like what carbohydrate metabolism and the overall benefits for it, from like overall energy production, blood sugar regulation, glycogen storage, and then metabolic processes. So carbohydrates, specifically those from fiber-rich sources, contribute to digestive health and satiety, feeling full. Some studies suggest that consuming enough carbohydrates can help with weight. So what we're finding out with this popularly known sugar diet is that it's increasing the body's metabolism, right? And the reason why is because of people who've been in low carb ketogenesis for some time now, or some people who've just been simply accruing high levels of cortisol within the body. They put carbohydrates back in their diet, they lower fat, they lower protein, and they're by default in a calorie deficit still, but they're also utilizing carbohydrate metabolism, which has a ton of great benefits. So let's cover the right way to use glucose metabolism, because there are certain factors of the sugar diet that do lack. Like, keep in mind, like I said, is that the sugar diet has not been clinically studied in randomized control trials as of yet. It's only active in social media. So if that tells you anything, is that, like, one, just be careful of what you hear on social media, because it has not been clinically studied in randomized control trials as of yet. It's simply just a fast-acting diet that promotes very quick results, but it's unsustainable results, just like any fad diet you see on the internet. But there are a lot of great benefits and a lot of great key points to glucose metabolism that the sugar diet does promote, but there's also a ton of different falters with it as well. So the sugar diet lacks protein, right? Essential protein, because the less protein you eat, the more hungry that you get, because protein promotes feeling full, like feeling satiated. Blood sugar fluctuations that could lead to overeating. And so, like, lacking protein in the diet not only leads to, lack of actual satiety feeling and feeling extremely hungry, because protein is the most satiating macronutrient, but also it leads to blood sugar fluctuations, makes you feel more hungry. So the sugar diet also lacks necessary fiber for reduced hunger and aiding in digestion, right? So it lacks fiber, for instance, just the important micronutrient that is important for digestion. And then when you cut protein, you also lose valuable muscle tissue that regulates testosterone levels and metabolic structure. So, like, when you lose muscle tissue, you degrade your metabolism. You lose metabolic structure, because the most important part of the male human anatomy is muscle tissue, because it's not only 4 times as metabolic as body fat, but it also regulates testosterone. It regulates a ton of different hormone levels. So if you start to lower protein levels, you start to detriment muscle tissue. And a lot of the guys I work with, for instance, are high-performing individuals who are in the gym a lot. It's like they need muscle tissue to support energy levels, testosterone, and to maintain a healthy, lean physique. And so if you detriment protein levels, you therefore start to lose muscle tissue. And we don't want that to happen, because even in the science, it says that it takes 4 calories to sustain 1 pound of body fat. It takes 8 calories to sustain 1 pound of muscle tissue. So muscle tissue is highly metabolic. So we don't want to degrade your overall metabolism by reducing overall muscle tissue. And then overall lack of fats, right? So fats regulate hormone levels, although fats is beneficial for glucose metabolism. Like, low-fat diet is an improvement in glucose metabolism, because we want the body to transition and properly use glucose as a primary fuel source. Too low in fats will reduce thyroid levels and hormone levels and testosterone levels, like T3, T4, metabolism, thyroid. All of that starts to decline when you start to go too low or too high in fats. So the structured correlated amount of fats is going to be healthy for overall, not only LDL and HDL cholesterol, because, LDL and HDL cholesterol, for instance, HDL cholesterol is human growth hormone, right? LDL cholesterol from healthy fats is obviously the cholesterol that we want to actually regulate. We can regulate all that within overall fats. So we don't want to degrade fats. And so the sugar diet, although it does have a lot of popularity in beneficial aspects to it, it's also lacking a lot of key necessities when it comes to overall beneficial nutrition from an overall just standpoint of health, right? So we don't want to get too caught up in what's happening in social media, but look, we do want to understand what is happening with the overall sugar diet, and that's the glucose metabolism state that the body's getting transitioned to. So what we use, which is very similar, yes, to the sugar diet, but we also manage protein and fats, is a higher protein, lower fat, and higher carbohydrate diet. And we do this by utilizing metabolic priming. So metabolic priming with carbs refers to strategically manipulating carbohydrate intake to optimize the body's metabolic processes, particularly from fat burning and energy production. It's a technique used to prepare the body for a fat loss phase to improve athletic performance, preconditioning the body, enhance fat burning, optimizing energy production, supporting muscle growth and repair, and it's a very individualized approach. Okay, so like we can see that there's a lot of similar factors to the sugar diet, like enhanced fat burning, optimizing energy production, but we're missing the supporting the muscle growth, and we're missing an individualized approach with it. Because if you're following a one-size-fits-all approach, what you're going to do is find a one-size-fits-all physique, one-size-fits-all health. And if you look around, we can probably agree that the average physique and the average health isn't at best. So we want to understand that, yes, the sugar diet has a lot of popular benefits, but it also has a lot of popular detriments as well that are actually missing. So what the overall importance of metabolic priming is understanding metabolic adaptation, which is the body's process of downregulating the metabolism to the decrease in calories over time, right? And here's a structure on how that really happens with metabolic adaptation. So there's a direct correlation between caloric intake reduction and then TDE actual, right? So as you start to reduce caloric intake, by default, metabolic adaptation does occur and your body starts to burn less calories, right? So the guys who are stuck under this 2,000 calorie mark, you've downregulated your entire metabolism, right? So when we know this, we can understand how to actually prime the metabolism back. And that is the process of slowly raising this up, and so we can get the TDE actual to actually go up. So like what this looks like is like understanding that using carbohydrates will reduce inflammation, improve serotonin, improve energy burning, and also target the specific part of your metabolism that burns the most amount of calories. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to raise caloric intake slowly to actually raise the TDE actual, which is your body's burning fuel at rest point, right? And so instead of doing a ton of cardio trying to burn calories, what we do from a metabolic standpoint within our clients is we utilize metabolic priming to improve TDE actual over time, right? And this is the overall goal, is to increase calories as we start to increase your overall TDEE. So like, how much easier would it be if you were to eat 2,800 calories, but your body's burning 3,200, right? And so that's what we do for our clients. And so what this looks like in active concept is my client John here. He's an ER doctor, very busy, doesn't have time for BS diets like the sugar diet. He needs some structure, he needs a plan, and he needs a GPS that is designed for his metabolism. So this is where John actually came to us, right? He came to us right at 175. And we can notice that, like in these side shots, his body looks highly inflamed. He's been doing low carb for a very long time. And he was right around 2,000 calories, I believe. Okay, so we had him right at 2,000 calories. So we actually started him on day one at 2,100 calories, which is right above where he was actually eating per day. And just within the first couple of weeks, he started to lose weight. And you can kind of see what happens to his overall cortisol in his body when we start to utilize glucose metabolism. So yes, this is the same process what the sugar diet does utilize, but it's a more structured approach. It's a more individualized approach as well. So what we're trying to do right here is we are trying to improve the metabolism, similar to like where the sugar diet does, but we're not losing muscle tissue. We're actually gaining muscle tissue. So we have a padding of actual muscle tissue to actually increase metabolism as well. And so we cut cardio to zero, and we focus on what we're really going to be most beneficial from a metabolic standpoint, which is raising this TDE over time. And so when we like look at the metabolism and basically the pie chart that I have on the metabolism, we can even see that like the most important part of your entire metabolism will be, you know, the basal metabolic rate, resting energy expenditure, right? 60-70% of your entire metabolism. So if we focus on this, we can almost get 5 times as much fat loss as what most programs will do, which is just tell you to do more exercise and eat less calories. Well, if you're somebody who's been eating less calories for an extended period of time, that's not going to do anything for you because you've reached a metabolic standpoint where your body's now down-regulated that the TDE overall. So we have to prepare the body and structure the body into a glucose metabolism state by lowering the fats, raising the protein, and then using carbohydrates similar to what the sugar diet does, but in a more structured context. So what we can see over time as we start to raise these is that even within the first couple weeks, right, he loses right off the bat almost 13 pounds right off the bat, eating more carbohydrates. And all we did was raise carbohydrates a little bit. And we can see as time goes on, he starts to get leaner. He starts to get leaner. He starts to get leaner. And all we're doing right here, you can just see, all we're doing is as he's checking in, we're seeing if his biology and his physique and if his metabolism will allow us to put more carbohydrates in his diet. And if it does, we do. And then once we get to almost 3,000 calories right here, he's now eating 3,000 calories. Keep in mind, in the starting photos right here, he was eating 2,000. So he's eating 1,000 more calories per day in these photos right here. 1,000 more calories per day, and all we're doing is utilizing the BMR, right? We've gotten now officially up to 3,000 calories, but we've maximized his BMR. And this is similar to what the sugar diet is doing, but we're also putting an approach that's more sustainable. We're putting a structure that's a lot easier to follow. We put a GPS in place where he just has to open his app with us and follow exactly what we do each week as we change him. And we don't change his calories each and every single week. We change them based on when his body is ready to. But this is when it starts to get really, really good. So like when we start to actually lower the calories back down, so after this, you know, we add a little bit of cardio, just a little bit of cardio to actually increase a little bit of energy expenditure. And it's just 25 minutes 4 times a week, right? And we lower the calories just a little bit right off the start. And we can see how quickly he starts to lean out, right? On the 27th, 167, we lowered the calories 100 grams of carbohydrates, right? When we lowered 100 grams of carbohydrates, we lowered another 25 right here, but you can already see that he's like starting to lean out significantly at 25 minutes of cardio per week. And then next week, boom, hits 161. The next week, he hits 156. And this is what he looks like as of yesterday, eating 2,400 calories, I believe. Yeah, 2,400 calories doing 25 minutes of cardio with a BMR that's still intact and an approach that's a lot more sustainable and maintaining hunger levels, maintaining actual body composition. And we're not just eating a sugar diet and throwing fats and protein out the window, which detriments hunger levels, which detriments muscle tissue, which detriments hormones within fat intake. We're actually giving them a sustainable approach that utilizes the same concepts as the sugar diet, but it's more structure, right? And now he's down 20 pounds, sustainable muscle tissue growth, up 400 calories per start, and he's absolutely lean. And we're just getting started with him. He's still with us as of right now, and he's continuing to make progress each and every single week. He's down 20 pounds, still eating 400 calories more per day. So all in all, although the sugar diet does have a lot of popular qualities that I do agree with, that I do think that like the sugar diet does structure and have a purpose in understanding glucose metabolism, but it does lack a lot of necessary value and overall macronutrients and nutrition that are going to be beneficial for not only a metabolic standpoint long term, but also just from a nutritional standpoint from a health perspective, right? Because you need protein, you need fats, and you need fiber, and you need all these different things to maintain a healthy long-term physique. The sugar diet, what it is, guys, and I'm gonna be like this is just my opinion straight up, is that what it is just a fast-acting diet that helps you see progress very quickly, but there's no sustainable approach to it. There's no individualized approach to it. It's an easy way for simple-minded people to follow a diet that don't want to get too serious about actually taking it serious. But like the approach we've used with almost 400 men aged 40 to 60 in literally just the last 6 months alone. And it's worked every single time. 1,000 calories more down per day, 400 grams of carbs, 57 years old, 1,800 calories, 1,000 more calories per day. 2,000 calories versus 3,200 calories, 1,200 more calories a day, 150 versus 450 carb, 47 years old, under 50 grams of carbs to 350 grams of carbs and absolutely shredded. And then, under 50 grams of carbs versus 275 grams of carbs. So yes, like the overall popular sugar diet does have mechanisms that are incredibly interesting to look into, right? They do have mechanisms that, from a scientific and metabolic perspective, are beneficial, but they are lacking a ton of variability from a metabolic perspective that makes the diet worth it and makes it actually sustainable. Instead, you need structure. You need to utilize carbohydrate metabolism similar to like the sugar diet does, but you need protein, you need fats, and you need a structured approach that is designed for you. So if this sounds like you and you've been struggling to get lean, but you want to get to a next level physique, you're 30 to 60 years old, like some of my clients, and you want to get back in shape like you were in your 20s, you want to get six-pack shredded like my client Wayne here, who's a senior VP, there'll be a link in the description of this video. There'll be a short video that actually describes metabolic priming a little bit more in detail, and you'll jump on a call with me and the rest of the team, and if it's a good fit, you will get you rocking and rolling. But for the purpose of just understanding and giving value to all of my subscribers, like I always do, hope you guys like these videos, and I hope you continue to follow along and let me guys know what you want to see, because the whole purpose of this channel is designated to teach you guys and the viewers more about metabolic health, the ins and outs on what's going on in the fitness industry, and what is going to work for you based upon what's worked for almost 400, almost 500 now of my personal clients in the past, using carbohydrate metabolism and actual structured approach with carbohydrates. So if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys next time.